On today's One at One Live, meet a church planter whose portable church just about burnt down the YMCA where they were meeting. All that and more in just a moment. Now, if you haven't already subscribed, make sure and click on the subscribe button right here and then the notification bell. That way you'll be notified when we have more great content about resourcing new churches or another one of our One at One live broadcasts. Now, if you're watching on Facebook, check the like button and make sure and like our page so you'll be notified when we premiere a new video. Now, stay tuned for today's One at One Live. Welcome to today's One at One Live. I'm Bobby Gilstrap with the New Work Foundation, and I have with me today Chip Wheeler. Chip, we are so glad to have you joining us today.
Well, thanks. Excited about being here, talking about church planting and all the New Work Foundation does.
Well, I appreciate you joining us. You're sitting out on the wraparound porch at your farm, which is a great place to be. But years ago, when you were first planting church at River Hills or River Hills Church in 2007, everything wasn't the same with your 4 dogs and all your kids. A lot of things have changed since then, hadn't they?
Just a little bit.
Yeah, well, it's been quite the journey for you, and I want you to share with our viewers a little bit today as they're watching a little bit about your journey. And, you know, life has been different, obviously, since you began and planted the church back in 2007 out in Winder. But I want you to tell us maybe something that's happened more recently. Tell us about someone maybe you've baptized recently or something, just, you know, the evidence that God is still present and God's still working there and what God started back in 2007.
Sure. I mean, we've been very blessed with that. And in the recent months, obviously with Corona and all the challenges you have to deal with trying to continue to do ministry, specifically evangelism in Corona, instead of sometimes doing ministry and doing evangelism, the knee-jerk reaction of the church is survive and figure things out. However, you still got to do it. And we finally started baptizing again in the last few months. And two that come to mind just specifically, we baptized them on the same Sunday. One was a young man I got to do his wedding, I guess 10 years ago. He and his wife, and dedicated all our kids. His wife came to know Jesus a while back, and we've been praying for him and sharing with him for really over 6 or 7 years, even did the funeral of his dad. And a couple of weeks ago, he came to me and said, "Hey man, I need to talk to you." And so we sat down, and he was just broken at the dinner table, and we sat down and talked, and he came to know Christ and was able to baptize him. So it's been really neat to see his journey, really from before he got married, getting married, having kids, his wife coming to Christ, him coming to Christ, and just overcoming some of the challenges and obstacles, and even going through the grief of his dad. And then at the same time, we baptized a kid on the other end of the spectrum who I think he's 8 years old. His name's Trey. Trey and his mom visited at an Easter egg hunt about 1.5 years ago at an event we had. They were impressed because we remember their names. So they started coming back to the church. Trey's dad doesn't come to church, but Trey and his mom went through a book through Cub Scouts to get his religion badge. And so Trey is really sensitive to what the Holy Spirit's doing, asked Jesus to come into his life, got to talk to him through that. And then I got to sign off on him getting his religion badge. And so a couple of weeks ago, we baptized him. And right afterward, I gave him his badge for his religious patch for his Cub Scout uniform, and the whole church was able to cheer him on for that. So it's kind of neat, man, to see the process of kids coming to Christ, adults coming to Christ. And we've been very fortunate in that. I would say, you know, a majority of our church has come to know Jesus through the church and the church plant we've done. So it's been really cool. It does present challenges, trying to disciple these people up, raise them up from pre-Christian to infant to toddler to adolescent to adult. But it's been an amazing journey to watch these people come to Christ.
Well, since 2007, there's a lot of things potentially I'm guessing have happened. I've often said if you put just a couple of preachers in a room together, give them about a 6-month span, and you could probably write a book about all the kinds of things that happen. But has anything happened unusual or something that really kind of would stand out that you can think of, maybe even recently, but it may have been something way back toward the beginning of the church?
In church planning, if it can happen, it will happen. And, and it's funny, it seems that our church has all the wild stories, and some of them you can't share openly just because they're so crazy. People wouldn't believe me. But a couple come to mind. I mean, we used to meet at the Winder YMCA. They were very gracious in letting us use their facility. And every day we'd get there at 6:30 in the morning and set up for church. And I'd go into the restroom and the locker room, take a shower and get ready and get dressed. And it was cold one January, and I turned the sauna on to make some heat come into the room. And I was sitting there praying, studying, and looking at my notes and getting dressed and just getting my mind right. And all of a sudden, smoke starts billowing out of this thing. And I'm not talking about a little bit of smoke like a candle. I'm talking about billowing, just billowing out of the sauna. Well, somebody had put a rubber yoga ball on top of the grates for the sauna, and we almost burned down the YMCA. The fire department was almost called. I mean, it was crazy.
Oh,
Things
man.
like that. I mean, and then other opportunities of ministry that just, if I told you, you wouldn't believe me. But crazy things happen, even going on mission trips to where, our car breaks down in the middle of traffic and praying that God would heal the car. And it did. That to me, that's not strange. It's more miraculous. But if anything can happen in a church plant, it will. That's just one thing I've learned after doing two churches, starting two churches. It's insane sometimes. Like, God, you put me here. I'll never forget planting our first church. Uh, Standing out on the porch of that church plant, and a guy who was obviously mentally ill was telling me that his parents were arrested at the Texas-Louisiana border with guns, and they were coming to kill him, and that it was actually his boyfriend was there as his bodyguard, and they were going to have to leave the church soon. And I didn't know what to say to that. It's just some things that they can't teach you, and that was one of them. And so you just pray through it, negotiate through it, share the gospel, and keep moving, man. God has a purpose in it.
Yeah, there's no question. Church planting is full of all kinds of oddities and things that happen. How long were you guys portable before you actually started building and were able to get into a building?
I believe we were 6 or 7 years portable. So that meant every Sunday morning, sometimes on Saturday nights, we'd be setting up. It became a system. Really, it became a machine with our volunteers and rotating them in and out, setting up, tearing down. So you're looking at 2 hours of setup, and then more people would stay after church, and then they tear it down. So especially when you start doing two services, you get there at 6 in the morning. We had one guy one time that was there to set up, but forgot it was daylight savings time and the time had changed. So he got there at 5 in the morning instead of 6 in the morning, saying, "Where's everybody at?" So, yeah, we were portable for a long time. There are pricks and perks to that. The good thing is it builds community easily and quickly. The bad thing is, if you're like me, you end up getting back surgery because of it. But those are some sweet times. I always tell church planners, don't ever forsake those times. Don't try to get in a building too quick.
I can concur with the loading and unloading and being portable. You had the blessing of doing that in the South. I was in Michigan and Ann Arbor, and I can very clearly remember 18 inches of snow on the ground unloading a U-Haul trailer into a school.
Yep.
And it's odd, but some of my favorite pictures, at least of memory, are not the things most people see. It's the unloading that trailer in the ice and snow and some of that, because the people who really step up are those people. Chip, you and I have talked a number of times over the past few years, but you and I were talking before we went on air for our 1-at-1 live viewers, and you were telling me about a quote that you've been kind of pondering on and thinking about and repeating recently. Share with me and our viewers that quote again.
Yeah, I love this, and this is something I've heard in the past, but in recent months, it's just been kind of rolling around in my brain. But it's attempt something so big that if God isn't in it, it's doomed to fail. And man, I love that. I love that as our church right now is turned 13 years old, and we're looking at our next 5 years about what are we going to attempt that's so big. I love that from the perspective of just individuals. What are we looking? What's that God moment? And then I think Harvard University called it a BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goal. But I think, put Lord in the middle of it, and it's going to fail unless he's the orchestrating and putting all the puzzle pieces. And then even for a church planner, it is attempt something so big. And if God is in it, unless God is in it, it's going to fail. And be willing to fail. Sometimes the failure is the beautiful part of it.
What excites you about church planting? I mean, you're no longer what you would consider a church plant. You're an established church pastor. You've been there long enough, even though we would often refer to you as you're a church planter, but you're an established pastor now, having been there long enough, but you're still really hyped up about church planting. What keeps you excited about church planting?
One, it's gospel. It's the Bible. They plant churches, man. Um, Two, is the creativity and the kind of having that blank palette to paint on. I would say three is just the excitement of seeing people who are far from God come to know Him, and doing it in ways that aren't necessarily traditional. And and I love what Milton Wood used to say, and I'm sure he stole it. Is when you get an established church, it's the three B's: is budgets and buildings and butts and seats. And in a church plant, you don't have to worry about that. I mean, it's something you deal with, but man, it's just being able to, man, be the be the frontiersman, be the be the colonist, be the person that goes out into the wild and beats down the bushes and finds pathways to share with people. That's exciting. It's exciting to look at these new opportunities, and they've always been there, but instead of focusing on holding it together, it's focusing on building it. And I love that.
Well, you've been at River Hills Church now for 13 years or so, something like that. Uh, we were able to come alongside your church as a foundation and help to resource your church in those earliest days, and actually have been able to help you a couple of times over those early years. When somebody asks you about the New Work Foundation or ask you about what we do, I mean, it's kind of ambiguous to a lot of people I know, but man, you've been a recipient, you and your church firsthand. And not only that, but you've always been very supportive financially. Your church is supportive. You're supportive personally. All those things, speak highly of your belief in church planting and the mission that we have. What would you say to somebody about the New Work Foundation, the importance of what we do?
If the New York Foundation did not exist, River Hills would not exist. I don't think I can keep it. I don't think I can put it more bluntly than that. The New York Foundation is why I feel like God led me to this area to start River Hills, because the partnership was so enticing, not just from a financial standpoint. That was beautiful. That was thankfully something I could count on, but from the support for our family, spiritually, encouragement, the network of church planners, and the need here in our community. We're in the South. There's a church on every corner, but I believe we're in the most unreached people group in the nation, just simply because we're so churched we don't know Jesus. And so being able to express the gospel, and whether you're going into Clarkston and you're looking at people who are Hindu or Muslim in the most diverse square mile in the Southeast, or whether you go out in some of our rural areas where people who are steeped in tradition but not Jesus. And so to me, the Newer Foundation offers opportunity for diversity in church planting, but also the support that the church plant needs. And so the importance of it, I don't know. I mean, it breaks my, to think that it didn't exist. It breaks my heart to think that wouldn't happen.
Let me wrap up with this, simple request. How would you ask for people to pray for you and pray for River Hills Church at this juncture as we're wrapping up?
I mean, praying for River Hills Church right now is like, what's next? What's next? We have a vision right now over the next 5 to 10 years to plant 10 churches. and to be able to fund that and be able to make that happen. That's our desire. That's our dream. We've got one off the ground already. We're hoping to get another one off the ground in the next 6 months. So that's one. Another is, we want to reach more people and disciple them, and spin off churches and spin off leaders out of our congregation. So praying for those two things. We're looking at what's the next 5 years look for us. We'd like to see, 10 churches planted, 100 baptisms a year, 1,000 people discipled, 10,000 gospel presentations, 100,000 hours served in the community, and $1 million given. And that's what we want to see over the next 5 years. So pray for us on that.
Yeah, we definitely will. I'm asking our viewers to join with us in doing that. So I hope that our folks and those of you who are watching today will join with Pastor Chip and the River Hills Church and many of the other churches. They're just one of 59 churches that we've been able to help resource. And what we've discovered, and Pastor Chip, I think you've heard this and know this, but for about every $735 that people have given to our foundation, we've been able to see at least one person come to know Christ through churches like River Hills Church and all the other new churches. I mean, that's just an incredible number to me, that just $725 has actually resulted historically in a person coming to know Christ. So I hope folks will find this of value. They'll subscribe to our pages, both on YouTube and Facebook, and continue to follow as we tell more stories and talk to more people like Pastor Chip, as we've done today on our 1 at 1 Live program. We'll see you again on another Tuesday at 1 o'clock as we interview another one church planter at 1. So thanks again for joining us. I'm Bobby Gilstrap for the New Work Foundation. We'll see you next time.